So I'm sitting there overlooking the ocean, having a really nice lunch in the sun, under the palm trees, in a really, really nice, small but nice co-working slash hostel. And I felt so lonely and I felt so sad. And I almost felt like I had completely made the wrong decision coming there, uh, going there to Sri Lanka in the first place. And I just felt so alone. And I think that is the part that you then just don't see on social media. So that is what I want to talk about today. Thank you for listening again to the Out of Office Club, where every week I share what it is like to be a digital nomad, to travel full time on your own. Um, and I talk about everything, really. So today I want to talk about the loneliness because for me, that really has two sides. And I think it is really good to talk about both sides, how I experience it, how I deal with it, what I recommend other people, and how I think what the mindset is, I think, especially in combination with this lifestyle. So, um, again, I've been traveling solo for 10 years now. I've done 80%, 90% of my travels on my own. Some I did with friends, with ex partners, but a lot was done alone. And I still absolutely love it. Right now, I'm on my own again. I'm in Taiwan, close to Taipei, and I'm here by myself. And it's, an adjustment yet again, which I'll get to in a second. But it's great. And I highly recommend anyone to do it. But of course, what you don't see, especially if you look on my social media and you see all these nice pictures or videos of me in places, it is sometimes lonely. And that is, I think, part of it. So it's not just the traveling part, which is amazing, but there are a lot of moments where you are alone and moments that you spend alone despite really wanting to share them with people. But you don't see that. So I know, and I always say that this lifestyle is not necessarily lonely, but you do spend a lot of time alone and it can get lonely. It just really depends how you handle it. And there's, of course, certain things that you can do to minimize feeling lonely. And however, I do believe some people underestimate it a little bit. Now, again, I do not feel lonely and I generally have a lot of people around me and I'm not often that alone, but that is realistically a large part of this lifestyle. Most of what I do on my own. So I will travel on my own, go to new countries by myself, then I get everything up and running by myself. So I figure out, how to build my routine in a new place, how to make friends. I even work alone. So a lot of my time is spent by myself and alone. And I think some people might underestimate this. I think also on the other side, a lot of people think it is way worse and way more lonely than it actually is. But it can feel heavy, I would say. So if I go back to that moment in Sri Lanka, I have before talked about how I felt in Sri Lanka and that I felt particularly lonely there. And that had a couple of reasons. I think, sorry, it is really hot in this room. I don't know if you're watching this on YouTube, but I'm in my new place and there is AC, but I'm not allowed to use it during the day. And it is midday, so I'm sweating a little bit. Don't mind that. But again, Sri Lanka was the first country far away that I traveled to 2.5 years ago when I first became a digital nomad. Again, I traveled loads before, but never completely as a lifestyle, usually just as a trip. And then I would go back to where I was living at the time, which was in Germany. But that was like the complete shift. That was when I went to Sri Lanka and I was there for 3 months in the end. I loved it, by the way. Highly recommend going to Sri Lanka. But that shift was quite tough. And now I had made sure that I was in more social places. So I booked a surf camp. I was staying in a couple hostels or in just busier areas. And at some point I had booked a really remote room because I thought after the surf camp, that's what I need. I need some alone time after sharing a room with strangers for a month and being around people all the day, all the time. So I went there, I booked it for a week. I left after 2 days because I was miserable and I really felt way too isolated and lonely. So I left and I went to another place, a hostel in a slightly busier small town with a co-working where I could just work, chat with some people, meet some people, and be on my own. And it was exactly that. It was exactly how I expected, exactly how they sold it. And still, I felt incredibly lonely in that moment. And I think those are moments that you just go through. There's not so much you can do about it, but they happen. And they usually, for me, happen when I go from a certain, not scenario, but like a certain routine and lifestyle to the next, which is always a big change. I went from very busy, very structured life in a surf camp, super social, to now being on my own again in a hostel where I have to put extra effort into meeting people. I was not sleeping that well. I was just a bit lost, I think. And that for me then highlighted this feeling of loneliness and thinking maybe I've made the wrong choice in coming to Sri Lanka in the first place. And maybe I should have gone somewhere else or not left at all, or, And that moment was not great. It lasted for a couple days, I would say. And that's usually what happens. I have that more often. I had it also when I came here to Taiwan, if I'm honest, because I just left Bangkok after 2 months where I had a great time. And now I'm back alone in a small, simple room somewhere. I have to start over again, which is always a bit tough. It makes me feel a bit more lonely and emotional, I think, the first day. So yes, those first days can be just miserable and they will be a lot harder. But that's part of it, I would say. And of course, next to that, which I think I also spoke about in a recent episode, is a bit of guilt that comes with it. Again, I was sitting there under the palm trees, looking at the ocean. It was a beautiful day, doing my work. I'm eating a great lunch, yet I feel sad and lonely and miserable. So there's also a bit of guilt there, thinking that I should not feel this way. I have no right to feel this way. I'm super privileged to sit here and experience this. And then, of course, the tough part is that you feel all of these feelings and you don't really have anyone to share them with. So there's no one sitting next to you that can give you a hug or tell you everything's all right. Actually, I think in that moment, I spoke to someone on the phone who told me that I had actually made a mistake and I should just go back to the Netherlands. So that didn't help one bit. Make sure not to speak to those kind of friends, because that also does not put you in a good mood, I can tell you that. But it's been 2.5 years since that happened. And like I said, those moments still happen, but it is different. I think loneliness while you're traveling solo, especially, happens. I think even if you do travel with a friend or a partner, it can happen. It just feels heavier because you're traveling and you're not at home. Everyone feels lonely occasionally, but when you're in a completely different city and country by yourself, it just hits harder for some reason, which makes a lot of sense, I would say. It's just more to navigate by yourself and it's a bit harder. And the thing I figured out is that largely it's about mindset, which is, don't get me wrong, still very tough to navigate, but it's mindset, it's a bit of strategy, and then understanding yourself. Those, I think, are the 3 main things that you need to worry about when you talk about the loneliness. The first one, of course, is the mindset. And that, I think, is a big one, because when I talk about that loneliness, I do think that even though I don't feel like it's a major thing or a major topic in my life and that I feel lonely super often, that is partially the price that you pay for this lifestyle. I think there's no nice way I can say that. If you want to travel alone, if you want to be a digital nomad, you will feel lonely. Loneliness is, or being alone, bit of loneliness is just a part of this. Every time you move, every time you want to do something different, every time you go to a different country, you are alone and you have to figure things out on your own. And that's just, I think, the price that you pay to be able to go to all these different countries and live this freely. Now, again, that does not mean just because you're alone does not mean you're lonely. Okay, get that in your head, please, because that is definitely a really good mindset shift. Yes, I'm on my own. Doesn't mean I'm lonely. I have a great time by myself. But it is partially also the price that you pay. The mindset shift also that you have to do there is, of course, accepting that, knowing that that is part of it, and then adopting certain strategies to make sure that you're not lonely. So I know now for me what doesn't work, at least a little bit better. I still make mistakes. I still sometimes overestimate what I need or underestimate what I need. I think that's a better one. And I think, oh, I'll be fine when I book this remote place and I'm going to enjoy it, only to realize when I get there that actually that is the one thing that makes me feel very lonely. While I know if I book a surf camp, a co-living, if I have an apartment closer in the city, if I immediately book some social events, if I have some type of even just work exchanges or something to do, I already feel a lot less lonely because I'm also just busy. So I don't have time to feel sorry for myself and feel lonely. So those are some great strategies. And that ties in with just really knowing yourself. Like, what is it that you need to not feel lonely, to feel okay? For some people, that is a lot more social activities than for others, but that just really depends on you. But that is, I think, the main part. You cannot have this lifestyle without occasionally feeling lonely. You will feel lonely, and that is fine. You need to accept that, move through it, figure out why you feel lonely, what brought that on, and how you can fix it. So for some people, that might mean lots of activities. For others, that might mean a nicer apartment closer to the city center. Maybe for some, it's even a quieter apartment or a co-living or a hostel or whatever it is for you. That's what you need to figure out and change. So the loneliness always passes, at least for me. I know that. It is something that I feel a lot of in the first day or two, and then it passes, especially once I figure out my new routine. And for me, that means gym, where to eat, how kind of structure my day, where I'm going to work from, whether that's from my apartment or from a co-working, and then some type of plan. I think usually what I'm missing when I am feeling very lonely is a plan. Even if I've only got one event booked for that week, I already feel better because I know right now I'm alone, but on Friday I've got a dinner planned or I'm going to an event and I'm going to meet some people and it's going to be fun, you know? So being lonely during this lifestyle is going to be normal. You're not doing anything wrong if you feel lonely. It does not mean that you've made the wrong choice. It just means that maybe right now you're not in the right mindset, or you're maybe just simply not in the right place. And both of those things are fixable. And on top of that, I also want to say that if you do really feel lonely and you do not feel good and it stays that way for weeks or months, do not try and power through. I think that is ridiculous. The reason also that you chose this lifestyle is to be flexible. And the greatest thing about that flexibility is that when you don't feel good, you can remove yourself from that situation. So if there's at some point, any moment where you say, I really feel so lonely and so bad, go home, go to wherever you have friends, go to a place that you know you like. I think for me, when Went to Bangkok earlier this year. I loved it. I went to the Philippines and I still loved it, but I did feel a bit lonely and a bit tired at the end. So I then went back to Bangkok because I knew I was going to enjoy it. I already had friends there. It was just, I didn't feel lonely for a second in Bangkok. So also use that to your advantage. If you do notice you are in a place or not in the right mindset or not in the right place and you want to change because it's not, you know, after a couple of days you're still feeling lonely or bad, then change what you need to change. Go home for a couple of weeks, meet friends, whatever it is. The loneliness is partially a price you have to pay for this, but that doesn't mean it has to cost you everything. Accept it, work through it, and then you'll see it's maybe not even that bad. I still absolutely love traveling alone. As a small personal update before I finish this episode, I'm currently again in Taiwan, in Taipei. I'm here for a month. I'm doing a work exchange. So that means that I stay here for free, which is amazing. And in exchange, I teach English to kids. So every day for a couple hours, I go to the school, I teach English, which basically just means I play games. They're teaching me how to play chess. We're doing a lot of drawings. It's really nice and they're really friendly. They actually have very good English. So that's how I spend now most of my days, which is lovely. And it gives me a sense of purpose, gives me something to do. I actually get to see how the people live. I get to meet locals. And then I have someone who is coming to visit me in 3 weeks, and which I'm really excited for. So I think this month's going to fly by. Absolutely. That feeling of loneliness is past. I figure out my stuff now. But yeah, I'm going to be here for a month. I think maybe even 5 weeks or so, 6. And then the chances are high that I will go back to Bangkok because, again, I loved it so much. I really had a great time. Plus, there's someone who lives in Bangkok who I really want to go and see again. So, if you know what I mean. So that is it. So, yes, I would love to know what you think about the whole loneliness versus solo travel topic, because I know it's a big topic and I know it worries a lot of people who might have not solo traveled much before. So let me know what you think. Thank you again for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Plus, I have a lot of free resources on my website. So take a look there for some discount codes, ebooks, tests. I have a fun quiz as well. Have a look there, and then I hope to see you again next week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.